Galw'r aelodau I drefn yr eitem gyntaf yn agenda ni'r prynawn yma yw'r cwestiynau i'r Prif Weinidog. A'r cwestiwn cyntaf, David Rowlands.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, when will the report on the investigation into the sale of land to South Wales Land Developments Limited be published?
Well, the Auditor General published his report in July of 2015 and the Public Accounts Committee published its report in January of 2016.
Well, I thank you for that reply, First Minister. First Minister, you set up an inquiry into what was described by a committee of this Assembly as a cavalier approach to the disposal of the public assets, which was scandalous. And this deal has also been described as one of the greatest blunders of recent times in Wales. Therefore, does the First Minister not agree that this inquiry is a test of the competence of the entire framework of scrutiny and administration, which makes up devolved administration in Wales? Further to this, is it not true that the magnitude of this blunder demands that the necessary checks and balances are put into place as soon as possible to make sure this sort of debacle does not occur again? At the moment, there appears to be a perception that this matter has been kicked into the long grass.
Well, no. The Auditor General recognised we acted quickly and appropriately once concerns were raised. We commissioned a review of the governance of RIFU and a peer review of the professional advice, which was conducted by Deloitte, and we made the results of both of these reviews available to the Auditor General.
Mark Reckless.
The Public Accounts Committee concluded that RIFU and Welsh Government lost the taxpayer tens of millions of pounds. Yet the Welsh Government has claimed it's not possible to demonstrate that land was sold undervalued. In responding to the PAC, Welsh Government confirmed a legal process had been initiated and said further legal steps were under review. Will the First Minister confirm whether that process and those further steps are civil, regulatory or criminal? And if he is to seek damages, can he confirm that he first needs to accept that he made a loss?
There are legal proceedings that are ongoing, and as a result, I cannot comment further.
Neil McAvoy.
Diolch, Llywydd. The facts of this matter are that, just take Lisvein. Land was sold for £2 million, which weeks later was said to be worth £41 million. The issue is a stain on devolution, and I believe it's a stain on your First Ministership. Do you support the South Wales Police reopening the investigation into the Lisvein land deal?
Well, first of all, you must be careful here, because there was involvement with ministers from his own party as well. But regardless of that fact, this was not an episode that reflected well on those who are part of it. That much I accept. Nevertheless, there are legal proceedings that are still outstanding, and as I say, I cannot comment on those proceedings while they remain current.
Cwestiwn 2, Hugh Davies.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister comment on the recent Estyn monitoring report on Coleg Cymunedol y Dderwen?
Well, I'm very pleased to see that Coleg Cymunedol y Dderwen has made sufficient progress against its recommendations from the core inspection in October 2015 to be removed from special measures. And I hope, of course, the school maintains and continues to improve.
I'm delighted the First Minister has seen that report, and he will note that the comments of Nick Breen, the executive head of the school, have been that they've flown out of special measures. I think it may even be unprecedented. The turnaround has been incredible. I remember shortly after the not far short of a crisis that the school went into, the head teacher standing up in a prize-giving ceremony in that school where their heads were down and saying, I tell you, we will turn this school around rapidly. And by that summer, we had achieved record GCSE results. Will he join me in commending not only the head teacher, but all the school staff, the support staff, the teachers, everybody involved in the school there, but also the governors as well, and also the pupils. This has been a difficult time for the school, but to fly out of special measures in this way, with the support of BCBC local authority, with the support of Welsh Government and the Schools Challenge Cymru funding, has been an incredible turnaround, and it shows what can be done with leadership at all levels for the good of our pupils and our students.
I think that analysis is absolutely right. Mr Nick Breen, of course, has an established track record elsewhere in the county borough. But it shows the difference that leadership can make to an institution, that is going through a difficult phase. The staff are pretty much the same, the pupils are pretty much the same, but the leadership clearly was not there in the way that people would have expected. It is there now, and it's fantastic to see the progress that's been made.
Susie Davies.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywydd, and can I just add my voice to those sentiments as well? I think this is amazing news for Coleg Cymunedol at Erwin. Even so, the report does note that the curriculum currently limits continuity in the development of pupils' Welsh and modern foreign language skills, and that it plans to address those in 2017-18. While bilingual and even trilingual skills, as I hope you accept, could be agents of social mobility, and of course we have the 1 million speakers target. So is there any support that Welsh Government might be able to give the school or the consortium that's involved in this additional advice or support in order to make sure that they actually crack this in this next 12-month period?
We do stand ready, of course, to provide advice, as will the local education authority. But I'm confident that with the leadership that is in place in the school now, that they will be able to meet the challenges that they have been set, and of course to continue with the good progress that's been made.
Caroline Jones.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, it is good news that Coleg Cymunedol of Erwin is out of special measures. The staff and pupils should be congratulated for making strong progress against the majority of Estin's recommendations. First Minister, what help is your government giving to the school to ensure they make better progress in improving the numeracy and literacy of pupils, and how will your government ensure this work is not affected by budget cuts imposed by the LEA? Well,
primarily, of course, it's a matter of the LEA to provide support for schools, but ultimately the school needs a strong leadership team, and that's been established at Coleg Erwin. The results are there for all to see, and we expect, of course, schools and the LEA to adhere to Welsh Government policies and to provide advice on that basis.
Cwestiwn yn nawr gan arweinwyr y pleidiau arweinydd grŵp UKIP, Neil Hamilton.
Diolch, the First Minister will know that the Welsh economy is worth about £60 billion a year, and of that, 38 billion is accounted for by public expenditure between the UK Government and the Welsh Government, about 2/3 of the total. Does he agree with me that there is an urgent need for greater diversification? We do need to get more private capital into Wales to generate more wealth, to raise the tax base, and therefore to have the opportunity to spend more on schools, hospitals, etc. And that's why the decision on the Circuit of Wales was particularly disappointing, because that was a project which offered £350 million worth of private capital to come into Wales. And now that isn't going to happen, instead of which we're going to spend another £100 million worth of taxpayers' money on an empty industrial park. Is this not an indictment of the Welsh Government that after 20 years we've gone backwards rather than gone forwards?
Well, the point I make about the circuit is that the circuit needed a government guarantee at the very least. Now, if the circuit was in a stronger financial position, it wouldn't need that guarantee. What we have done is to move forward with a technology park. It's based on discussions we've had with potential investors. It's based on the fact that for some time it's been difficult to attract investment into some parts of Wales because of a lack of buildings where people can actually base themselves. And thirdly, of course, it'll have a heavy emphasis on skills. The last thing we want is for jobs to be created, but for local people not to be able to access those jobs. And the technology park will deliver in all those areas.
The technology park will just deliver a set of empty buildings. There is no interest in those buildings that the First Minister can point to, which gives any guarantee that they'll be occupied for any automotive firm or any other firm, actually. Whereas at least with a world-class racetrack, in the light of decisions which might be made in Silverstone, where Formula One could move away, then this is an obvious hub to form a cluster of related industries. Without that, there is little prospect that this will be any more successful than the Ebervale Enterprise Zone in attracting jobs to a part of the world which desperately needs them.
Well, as I've said, the reality is this. We have spoken to potential investors. There is interest. We're not looking to put a building up there which won't be filled. The reason why we're moving ahead as we are is because we have taken some days, and we have listened to companies such as TVR, who are coming to Ebervale, and others who are interested in creating that automotive cluster. They all said to us that a circuit was not essential to their business plans, and they still want to work with us to deliver those jobs. Bear in mind, of course, that the circuit itself would have created very few jobs indeed. it was the phase 2, the technology park, which we're looking to build, which would have created most of the jobs.
Well, that's, of course, been said by the developers all along, that the great advantage of this facility was to be the centre of a much larger collection of firms which would generate jobs in the real economy of manufacturing for many, many years to come. Those jobs are now more speculative than before, but instead of a government guarantee which might never be called upon, we now have an actual promise by the Welsh Government to spend real money, taxpayers' money, up to £100 million over 10 years, with no guarantee of a single job coming out of that beyond the construction phase. So shouldn't we really be doing a lot more than we are to make Wales an attractive venue for private sector investment? As I said in my first question, in order to raise the tax base so that the Welsh Government has more resources available to it to spend on all the highly desirable social objectives that we all share.
Well, I don't disagree with the point he's making. I remind you, of course, about the announcement by CAF last week of 300 jobs being created in Newport. We have just seen our best foreign direct investment figures for nigh on 30 years. It's a sign that Wales is a place that businesses want to invest in, that we are getting better jobs. In the early 90s, investment was attracted into Wales on the basis that we had the lowest wage rates in Western Europe. Those days are long gone, nor should they ever return. We are increasingly able to attract jobs into Wales on the basis that our people have the skills that are required. That, to quote Aston Martin, we have a government with pride and passion in terms of selling Wales to the world, and the results that we see for FDI speak for themselves.
Arweinydd Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. Do you believe Wales is moving towards free higher education or further away from it?
I believe we've put in place a fair package of funding for both undergrads and postgrads. And that is, of course, something that we are proud as a government to do. The package available to students in Wales will be more generous than those in England.
I know it's the end of term, First Minister, but that wasn't a very convincing answer. I've heard a range of attempted justifications in this chamber and outside from you and Cabinet members to the announcement that was made last week. But what I'm hearing from students is very different. The NUS believes that tuition fees should be frozen, and they say that the announcement that your government has made is a huge step backwards. They say that this will hinder access to education rather than help it, and that they say that there should be pragmatic steps towards free higher education. Those students were quoting what was, up until last week, Labour Party policy. Why have you turned your back on them?
Well, the NUS signed up to the Diamond Review, so it's surprising that they now say that they're not supportive of what's proposed. Of course, they will want to represent students. We understand that. What the Diamond Review does is also provide funding. What the Diamond Review also does is to provide, for the first time, support for postgraduate students, which is hugely important. And we stand by, of course, the manifesto promises that we made in 2016.
The Diamond Review didn't recommend a hike in fees, First Minister, and also a number of parties signed up to participating in that review, but they didn't sign up to implementing whatever outcome was recommended. That is down to your government. First Minister, you've turned your back on students, and you must be hearing the same messages that we have been hearing. Plaid Cymru believes that higher education is a public good and should be funded across the education budget by the whole of society. Students want their universities to be better funded through FMQ and through your government, not from their own pockets. Students should not bear the brunt of that demand for better funding because there is a historic funding gap that exists due to your lack of investment as a government. You want students to pay for that funding gap. We believe that that is unjust. Now, I note that the announcement was made during the summer holidays.
Can we allow the Leader of Plaid Cymru to continue, please? We don't need accusations being hurled around the chamber.
Diolch, Llywydd. That announcement was made during the summer holidays when students have already left campus. At the end of this Assembly term, will you now give those students some well-deserved good news and abandon that tuition fee hike? Or does the Labour Party no longer believe in free higher education?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised to hear that she's distancing herself from the Diamond Review, which is news to me, I have to say, at this stage. Secondly, it is not sufficient for her to say that she wants tuition fees to be abolished without saying where the money is going to come from. It is not serious politics to say that. It is not serious politics. It is not serious politics to say in Wales that you want to abolish tuition fees and then not say where the money is coming from. We have to deal with the real world. Secondly, is she saying...
Let's hear the First Minister respond. Let's allow the First Minister to respond.
Secondly, is she saying fees for undergraduates or postgraduates as well? That is something that she needs to clarify. What we have done is recognise that postgraduate funding has not been there in sufficient levels in the past, and so the package we offer for undergraduates and postgraduates is both fair and in advance of that available in England.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, yesterday the Auditor General issued this report into the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board's contractual relationships with RKC Associates, which for the uninitiated is a human resources company. In the 10 years that I've been in this Assembly, and I've seen quite a few reports in fairness in that 10 years, this clearly is one of the most damning reports that I have seen, and I'd be grateful to understand what your take is on it, given that Welsh Government is cited on several references about giving permission for the contracts to be engaged with this individual, and above all, being on the selection panel that finally allowed the individual to go forward and take this place with the Cardiff and Vale Health Board.
Well, these are matters ultimately for the Health Board to explain, but I know the Minister will be talking to the Health Board in order to get an explanation from them, and will, of course, inform the Assembly in due course.
First Minister, I had hoped you'd been far better briefed than that. It isn't exclusively a matter for Cardiff and Vale Health Board by any stretch of the imagination. This is a health board that is in some measure of special measures from the Welsh Government, so financial scrutiny in particular, because it faces a huge financial deficit, 30 to 35 million at the last estimate in this financial year. The contract that was agreed and the terms of employment in certain respects was paying £1,000 a day plus expenses plus VAT. According to the Auditor General. There is little or no transparency, there is little or no accountability, there is an inability for the Auditor General to actually understand how the appointments were made, because there does seem amongst the former senior executives of the Health Board pointing to someone else as making the decision and just going round and round in circles. The one clear person who is involved here, because she was on the selection panel when the final appointment was made, is the Health Board Chairman, who was sitting on that selection. Do you have confidence in the Health Board Chairman, given the accusations that are put, not the accusations, sorry, the proposals that have been put in this report from the Auditor General himself? Because we have seen it time and time again. When these things run out of control, they can have disastrous consequences for the running and the well management of the Health Board in delivering services here in Cardiff and Vale.
Well, first of all, the Health Board is not in special measures. He said it's a kind of special measures, but it's not actually in special measures in terms of the definition of the term. Secondly, the Health Secretary will be taking the matter up with the Health Board, will be demanding answers, and those answers will be shared with the Assembly.
I noticed you didn't give a vote of confidence to the chair of the Health Board, and I offered you that opportunity. Can you not understand how frustrated, how angry members of the Health Board feel when they see a report like this, when they identify consultants being brought in on £1,000 a day plus expenses over the 18 months of the employment, £26,000 plus VAT in expenses alone? That's more than a nurse starts on, that is. And then, when a final contract was offered, they came to the Welsh Government to seek permission to raise the ceiling from £136,000 a year to £150,000 a year. Now, this is a health board that has been in the news because of the court case last Friday, that staff are facing prosecution and also demands for payment of accrued fines. But more importantly, there will be huge anger by key members of the Health Board and patients who use that Health Board when they understand the cavalier nature in which this situation has arisen. It cannot be allowed to continue, and as I said, the Welsh Government's permission was sought to allow these arrangements to progress, and the Welsh Government gave its permission. So you do have a key role to understand this and actually make sure it doesn't happen again. And I also note that the Director General of the Health Service has written to all health boards in Wales to understand, are there any arrangements like this in other health boards? Are you in a position to clarify the position on your understanding of arrangements, in particular when it comes to consultancies like this in other parts of Wales that could bring the health service into disrepute?
Well, first of all, I do have confidence in the Chair. Secondly, this matter is something that needs fuller investigation, and Assembly members will be told what the outcome of that investigation actually is. He mentioned the issue of staff car parking. This has been something that's been in the news recently. It is important, I think, that the reasoning behind the court case is understood. The reason why enforcement was put in place because there had been a death on the site, partially due to illegal parking, partially due to the traffic flow going through the site. Some 16,000 traffic moves go through UHW at the moment. And it is right that there's proper enforcement of illegal and unsafe parking. So that has to happen on a site that is this busy. Why these individuals went to court and what advice they received is difficult to know. I do note that one of them in particular had 59 parking tickets, which, again, no explanation is given as to why that is. It's unfortunate for those individuals, I understand that, but it is hugely important that there's proper enforcement on the UHW site in terms of safety and to stop people parking there all day in order to make sure that other patients who arrive on site do have places to park. So enforcement has to happen. Otherwise, are we saying that people can park there without any fear of any kind of penalty? Things have gone very far with regard to 3 individuals. It's difficult to know why that is. I can say that the idea that they face costs of £150,000 is nonsense. We don't know where that figure has come from, and that has absolutely no basis in fact. But UHW is a site where there's a great deal of traffic movement, and there does need to be enforcement regarding that movement.
Question 3, Paul Davies.
Diolch yn fawr. A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am yr hyn y mae Llywodraeth Cymru yn ei wneud i wella trafnidiaeth gyhoeddus yn Sir Benfro.
Mae'r cynllun cyllid trafnidiaeth cenedlaethol a gyhoeddwyd yn mis Gorffennaf 2015 yn nodi'r buddsoddiad mewn trafnidiaeth gyhoeddus ar gyfer 2015 i 2020 ym mhob ran o Gymru.
Prif Weinidog, yn ddiweddar mae Llywodraeth chi unwaith eto wedi penderfynu peidio a blaenioraethu unrhyw orsafoedd trenau yn Sir Benfro gweitha bod rhai gorsafoedd fel gorsaf Aberdagleddau enghraifft mewn angen gwelliant sylweddol. Nawr, dwi'n gwerthfawrogi pan byddwch chi fel Llywodraeth yn buddsoddi arian mewn prosiectau rheilffyrdd. Byddwch chi'n neud hyn gyda rhanddeiliad fel Network Rail, yr EVA Trains ag ati. Ond i ystyried eich bod chi'n gwario arian sylweddol, a allwch chi ddweud wrthyn ni beth ydych chi'n neud i sicrhau bod unrhyw arian gan Lywodraeth Cymru sy'n ariannu gwelliannau yn cael ei ddosbarthu'n deg fel bod pob rhan o Gymru o leiaf yn cael ei ystyried?
Mae yna greitiriaeth gwrs sy'n agored, be ddylwn ni'n gallu gweld sydd yn cael ei defnyddio mwyn sicrhau pa o'r safoedd delegal i gefnogi dros y blynydde. Mae hwnna'n broses hollol agored. Dwi ddim yn rhoi unwaith o bwysau un rhan o Cymru yn y llall, mae'n ystyried pa lefydd sydd eisiau'r buddsoddiad. Wrth gwrs, trwy buddsoddiad Llywodraeth Cymru agorodd, gorsaf tre Abergwaun, wrth gwrs, ar ôl sawl blwyddyn wedi cael mwy o wasanaethau hefyd ar y rheilffordd hynny, a ni wastad wrth gwrs yn ystyried am pa ffordd allwn ni helpu i wella'r gwasanaeth rheilffordd a hefyd y gwasanaeth bysu yn Sir Benfro.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch Llywydd. Mae Prif Weinidog nath chi gadarnhau dydd Gwener yn pwyllgor craffu y Prif Weinidog. Na fydd y masnachfaint yn un lle mae elw yn dychwelyd i gyd i'r Llywodraeth, ond un lle ydych chi'n goffod contractio gyda cwmni private. Pa gamau ydych chi'n cymryd felly i sicrhau bod unrhyw elw sydd yn dod o dwf a buddsoddiad sydd gan Llywodraeth Cymru yn y fasnachfaint yna yn cael ei dychwelyd i bobl yn Sir Benfro a thu hwnt, a bod ni ddim yn gweld y sefyllfa presennol lle mae un cwmni yn gwneud elw a gefn arian gyhoeddus.
O byddwn wrth gwrs rhywbeth byddwn ni'n derbyn gael ei weid hwnna, a neb arall wy'n credu. Dyw'r cyfle ddim gyda ni i rhedeg y gwasanaeth y rheilffordd yn hunain neu trwyddo cwmni sydd ni'n rheoli. Ond wrth gwrs, mae'n holl bwysig bod gyda ni model sydd mor agos a sy'n bosib i fodel sydd yn ailfusoddi unrhyw elw nôl yn y gwasanaeth i hefyd, gwasanaeth i hunan. A hefyd, wrth gwrs, i sicrhau bod pobl Cymru yn gweld cynnydd yn y lefel o wasanaeth, nid dim ond ynglyn â mwy o drenau, ond mwy hefyd, wrth gwrs, o drenau sydd yn drenau da i deithio arno, a mae hwnna'n rhywbeth sydd yn holl bwysig fel rhan o'r franchise.
Cwestiwn 4, Mike Hedges.
Will the First Minister make a statement on Welsh Government support for enterprise zones?
Yes, we remain committed to supporting the existing 8 enterprise zones located across Wales, and a written statement will shortly be published to detail how that's being achieved.
I can thank the First Minister for that response. The 1980s enterprise zones were not successful in Wales, with the largest in Swansea becoming a large out-of-town shopping area. In fact, the term enterprise zone in Swansea is used to define an out-of-town shopping area. When are the current zones going to be reviewed, and what will constitute success?
Well, success, of course, involves creating more jobs. It does not involve creating another shopping park, which, as the member rightly says, has happened in the lower Swansea Valley in the early 1980s. I can say in terms of governance that the Cabinet Secretary met with the Enterprise Zone Board chairs on the 12th of June to have an initial discussion around enterprise zone governance and the future direction of the enterprise zone programme in Wales. And I know that the Cabinet Secretary plans to meet the chairs again at the end of the summer to continue those discussions, focusing on ensuring future arrangements meet the requirements of the government and emerging government policy.
Russell George.
First Minister, there are 8 enterprise zones across Wales. None of them cover my own constituency. I would say in mid-Wales there is a great feel of entrepreneurship. There's a higher level of business startups than perhaps in other parts of Wales. So what I would ask you, First Minister, is do you think there's a case for an enterprise zone or a growth deal for mid-Wales, particularly focused on growing businesses and creating higher paid jobs?
We'll always examine that case. I mean, 2 things are important for his constituency. First of all, of course, infrastructure, broadband being one element of that. Secondly, there is an issue with the electricity grid, which is controversial, I understand, in his constituency, but the current grid is not particularly strong when it comes to developing manufacturing in the future. And he knows, as I know, how controversial pylons are in his constituency, so I'll leave it at that. But it is an issue that will need to be resolved in the future. But no, more than happy to consider what such a growth deal might look like, how it would work geographically as well in some parts of Wales, and of course to share with him his desire to make sure that to see more and better jobs closer to home.
Adam Price.
Diolch, Llywydd. I think many people feel that the Circuit of Wales was a massive missed opportunity for the Ebwy Vale enterprise zone. Last week, referring to a pre-arranged meeting with the company, you said the company accepted the issue with regard to the issue of being on balance sheet and the risks that posed to us. They did not argue with it. The chief executive of the company, Martin Whittaker, said, clearly that statement is incorrect. We made it clear that we did not agree with this assessment. First Minister, which of you is lying?
What I said is correct. I stand by my words.
David Rees.
So the last of those 8 enterprise zones is actually in Portalbyn in my constituency, the only one in South Wales West. But it's important we see that now used to actually grow the local economy and grow local businesses. How are you monitoring that progress in that enterprise zone to ensure that actually that does take place and that the purpose of the zone is actually being achieved?
Well, we're confident that the enterprise zone is working well in Port Talbot. We know, of course, that there's an opportunity for world-class manufacturing. Development, for example, of a full ICT infrastructure that will develop a relationship with Tata Port Talbot, developing the energy and environment capability of the enterprise zone, construction of appropriate business and office units, and assist the building of the Baglan Bay Innovation Centre. And I can say that since the inception of the zone, a number of inquiries have been received, seeking information about support for growth or new locations. These are at the early stages of development, but there are potentially some significant inward investments.
Question 5, Hefin David.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's approach to inclusive work-based learning?
Well, last week, the Minister for Skills and Science set out the Government's agenda for employability. Working Wales recognises this Government's commitment to ensure work-based learning remains inclusive for all, irrespective of need.
Last week, I met with Dr Stephen Bayer of Cardiff University, who is working on the Engage to Change project, which was set up using money from dormant bank accounts and based on a partnership between Big Lottery and Welsh Government. The aim is to get 16 to 25-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training into and have learning disabilities and or autism into long-term employment. One of the organisations working with it is Trinity Fields School and Resource Centre in my constituency, and I'm a governor and I declare an interest. I think it's got an important role, this project, in supporting job coaching and work experience for those young people. I think it can also have implications for transition under the new arrangements being brought forward by the Additional Learning Needs Bill. Would the First Minister therefore support a model of this kind if the pilot in Cardiff University, through Cardiff University, is proven to be successful?
Yes, we look to see, of course, how the model works, and we'll evaluate the model. But we're very keen to make sure that we have as much available to get people into work, particularly those who have learning disabilities, those who are on the autistic spectrum, and of course we look forward to seeing what the results of the project are.
Mohammed Ashka.
Presiding Officer, I am sure the First Minister will agree that higher education should engage with work-based learning to address the economic imperatives for the supply of workers with appropriate skills and knowledge to equip them the changing nature of work at present job climate. What is the Welsh Government doing at the moment to encourage increased collaboration between employers, employers' organisations, and further higher education to deliver and expand the relevant workplace learning in Wales?
Well, we work very closely, of course, with employers, because we know that work-based learning is hugely important to develop people's skills in the future. We are looking at how to develop people's employability and how we work with businesses in order to make sure that people have the skills they need for the future.
Gareth Bennett.
Diolch, Llywydd. Many employers feel young people leave the education system today lacking the practical skills they need for the labour market. Many people have degrees, for instance, but are not regarded by employers as being work-ready. Do you think that the university system in Wales could do with a shake-up?
I think universities have actually improved over the years in terms of the way they work with business. It's true to say that some 10 years ago the link was very tenuous. Universities didn't see themselves as needing to work with businesses in the way that they do now. I certainly worked with universities, gone to universities where they are working very closely with business, where they see themselves as an economic driver to create start-up businesses, and that's something that I very much welcome.
Cwestiwn 6, Llyr Griffith.
Wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am bwysigrwydd lleisiau cleifion wrth ddarparu a datblygu gwasanaethau iechyd.
Mae'n hollol allweddol bod llais densyddion yn cael ei glywed yn barhaus wrth ddatblygu a darparu gwasanaethau iechyd o gofal o ansawdd uchel.
Wel, odi mai, ac wrth gwrs mae'ch llywodraeth chi yn ymgynghori ar y funud ynglyn â chael gwared ar gynghorau iechyd cymunedol statudol, a dwi'n gweld hwn yn gam yn ôl ac yn gam peryglus a dweud y gwir, yn wedig i ni'n y gogledd, oherwydd mae angen llais cryf annibynnol gyda phresenoldeb lleol sy'n gallu herio'r byrddau iechyd a herio'r llywodraeth hefyd pan fod angen gwneud hynny. Mae'r cyngor iechyd yn y gogledd wedi gwneud dros 500 o miliadau ward yn y flwyddyn diwetha, sef rhyw 500 yn fwy na mae'r olygaeth gofal iechyd Cymru wedi i'w wneud yn y gogledd. A mae angen ehangu rôl y cyngor iechyd, nid i ganoli mewn i ryw gorff cenedlaethol anelwig. Nawr, mae'r model newydd sydd yn cael ei grybwyll yn eich ymgynghoriad chi wedi seilio'r gyngor iechyd yr Alban, sydd, wrth gwrs, wedi ddisgrifio yn ddiweddar fel toothless hamster. Nawr, ydych chi'n cytuno y byddai dilyn y trywydd hwnnw yng Nghymru yn gamgymeriad mawr?
Wel, ni'n gwybod bod sawl un wedi dadlau eisiau model newydd mwyn sicrhau bod yna gynrychiolaeth effeithiol o ddinasyddion ynglyn â'r byd iechyd a gofal cymdeithasol. Dyw hwn ddim yn rhywbeth sy'n mynd i wanhau llais dinasyddion, ond i moyn wrth gwrs i glywed beth yw barn bobl ynglyn â'r cynlluniau sydd gyda ni i gorff annibynnol newydd, ac wrth gwrs yn hapus iawn i glywed beth aelodau ac wrth gwrs aelodau o'r cyhoedd i ddweud ynglyn â'r ffaith i sicrhau bod hwn yn rhywbeth sydd yn gryfhau llais cleifion.
Rhiannon Pasmo.
Diolch fawr. First Minister, will you join with me in welcoming the construction of a new state-of-the-art £350 million hospital in Cwmbran named the Grange University Hospital? It will help to modernise health services across Gwent for my constituents also in Islwyn. Judith Paget, Chief Executive of Aneurin Bevan University Health Board, said, and I quote, "We have received fantastic support from local people living in the Health Board area as they understand the benefit that this hospital will bring." First Minister, isn't this the Welsh Labour Government and the Welsh National Health Service in synergy, working together, listening to patients in the provision and development of health services? How can we continue this good practice in the interests of our people who know that the NHS is safest in Welsh Labour hands?
Well, I mean, the Conservative benches didn't welcome that statement. They were complaining about it. I sense the members' enthusiasm, which is great, but not as great as the member for Torfaen, whose enthusiasm was there for all to see within the chamber itself. But this shows, of course, that we are investing in modern health facilities for our people, and this is a great example of that happening under a Welsh Labour government.
Mark Isherwood.
Well, getting back to the original question, the Vale of Clwyd Trades Union Council, in responding to the 29th of June Welsh Government White Paper, Quality and Governance of Healthcare in Wales, proposing the abolition of community health councils, said because of its make-up, the North Wales Community Health Council is the ideal body to be our patients' voice and watchdog. How do you respond to that statement and to the response by the North Wales Community Health Council that the proposals would see the end of long-standing arrangements set up to place power in the hands of local people to monitor how their NHS services are working? And, for example, the proposed new citizen voice body would not have legal rights to hold health organisations to account for the way in which they deliver their services.
Well, we examine that response along with many others, and that will inform the final decision that we take. The fact that something has been in place for many years doesn't necessarily mean it should continue in the future, but we look forward to the results of the responses that we get through the consultation.
Cwestiwn 7, Nathan Gill.
Thank you, Clary. What is the First Minister's assessment of the homelessness situation in North Wales?
Well, our focus on prevention is having a positive impact in both North and South, with almost 8,800 households prevented from becoming homeless.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. You're probably aware that every year about 15,000 people become homeless in Wales, including 2,800 children. Of those, a few hundred will be living on the streets. Last week, my office was able to help find accommodation for a former armed forces veteran who, because of mental health issues, found himself homeless. According to homeless charities, there's an estimated 7,000 ex-service men and women living on the streets in the United Kingdom. What is your government going to do with local authorities and other associated agencies to ensure that your Armed Forces Covenant in Wales is fulfilled?
Well, we have developed a number of distinct approaches to support some of those members of our community most at risk of homelessness. That includes the new housing pathway to help ex-service personnel, the national pathway for ex-offenders, the pathway to help young people avoid homelessness, and an accommodation framework for care leavers to ensure they get the help they need to find suitable accommodations. That pathway is in place because we recognise, of course, that many members of the armed services, together, of course, with others who are particularly vulnerable, need that specific help.
Janet Finch-Saunders.
Local authorities across Wales, according to your government, are expected to provide some form of cold weather provision for homeless individuals and rough sleepers, irrespective of whether there is a statutory duty owed to them. Guidance on this policy, First Minister, though, is very ambiguous. Certainly in my own authority, there are no set temperatures or indications of what kind of weather conditions are included within the policy. Therefore, how this is applied can vary on an almost daily basis during very extreme weather conditions. What discussions will you hold with regards to introducing a more uniform guidance across Wales so our most vulnerable, homeless and rough sleepers are not quite simply left out in the extreme cold?
Okay. That process has started, but of course there's nothing to stop the local authority doing this themselves and actually saying what their guidance will be, what temperatures they will recognise. Nothing to stop them doing that, but nevertheless, we are moving forward with the process of starting to look at strengthening the guidance to introduce greater consistency across Wales.
Rhyn ap Iorwerth.
Diolch. Gai dynnu'r sylw chi at achos diweddar etholwr oedd heb gartre ac y bu cyngor ar bopeth a finna yn ceisio i helpu i sicrhau cartre argyfwng tan bod cartre mwy parhaol yn cael ei ddarparu ar ei gyfer. Dwi'n deall y pwysau sy'n ar awdurdodau lleol wrth reswm, ond yn yr achos yma doedd y cyngor ddim yn ystyried i bod nhw'n gallu gweld yr unigolyn yma fel blaenoriaeth. Ond yn yr achos yma, be oedd ganddyn ni oedd unigolyn oedd wedi cael diagnosis o broblem iechyd meddwl, oedd wedi cael gweithiwr cefnogi wedi cael ei neilltuo ar ei gyfer o. Mewn achos o'r math yna felly, ydych chi fel Prif Weinidog yn cytuno bod rhaid ystyried y rhai sydd wedi cael diagnosis iechyd meddwl fel blaenoriaeth?
Anodd iawn, wrth gwrs, ynglŷn â bod sydd â problem iechyd meddwl, bydde neb yn dadlau yn erbyn sicrhau bod nhw yn cael y cymwystion nhw. Sy'n aelod yn sgrifennu eto fi gyda manylion i etholwr, bydde digon hapus wrth gwrs i ystyried y sefyllfa i weld beth allwn ni'n ei helpu.
Cwestiwn 8, Lee Waters.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, what action will you take to counter the balance the UK Government's job centralisation programme in relation to the Department for Work and Pensions?
Well, the Minister for Skills and Science met with Damien Hines MP, the Minister for Employment, last Thursday. Our Minister stressed our profound concerns and urged that the DWP work with Welsh Government to explore alternate solutions, including co-location where feasible, to ensure that good jobs can be kept locally.
Thank you, First Minister. I too met with Damien Hines last Wednesday along with the MP for Llanelli, Nia Griffith, and once again found him to be urbane but indifferent to the plight of the workers in Llanelli, where the 150 jobs will be relocated. An estimated 50 of them will not be able to take up that offer of relocation because it simply isn't practical on part-time work to be able to travel to Cardiff. The impact will be significant in areas like Llanelli, despite the pledge of the Prime Minister as part of our industrial strategy to spread the wealth. And as you say, despite the offer of the Welsh Government to help to relocate the offices to assist the Department of Work and Pensions, there was no intention to engage seriously with the Welsh Government on this. When the Welsh Government brings forward its economic strategy later in the year, will you make sure there are specific provisions to rebalance the economy to compensate for this centralisation programme the Tories are pushing through?
Well, our mantra is better jobs closer to home. That guides what we do. We know that it's hugely important that government jobs are available across Wales. We've done that. We've opened our offices across Wales. Those offices that existed in Carmarthen, in Carnarvon, in Llandrindod, we've always resisted the pressure to do away with them. They are still there because we know how important they are to the local economy. Unfortunately, the same principles and values are not shared by the DWP.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Mae'n siomedig iawn, wrth gwrs, beth sydd wedi digwydd yn Llanelli yn benodol y ffaith bod cynifer o bobl falle ddim yn gallu symud ac ail-leoli, ond gan droi at eich ymateb chi i Lee Waters, mae strategaeth swyddfaidd chi yn sôn am cau swyddfaidd hefyd. A ydych chi'n sôn am cynnyfu gostwng y nifer o swyddfaidd i rhywbeth fel 14-15. Felly, am ha ffordd, a dweud y gwir, ydych chi yn wahanol i DWP?
Wel, mae yna rhai swyddfeydd wedi cael dros y blyddau. Bach iawn o bobl oedd yn gweithio ar nhw, a nhw'n agos iawn i swyddfeydd eraill. Beth wnawn ni byth yw canoli swyddi yn dyfodol. Dyna pam, wrth gwrs, mae swyddi wedi symud mas o Gaerdydd dros y ddengmlynedd diwetha. Ac wrth gwrs, mae hwnna'n rhywbeth ni moyn sicrhau sy'n datblygu eto yn y pen draw.
Cwestiwn 9, Nick Ramsey.
What steps is the Welsh Government taking to improve access to healthcare services in Monmouth?
Well, the new Grange Hospital, of course, represents a significant commitment of £350 million that will provide services for the people of Monmouth and, of course, the former county of Gwent. And that, of course, will represent a significant step forward in terms of healthcare for the people of Monmouthshire and beyond.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. It was a pleasure to join the Health Secretary yesterday at the new Grange University Hospital site. Much better name, I think, than the old SCCC that we've been calling it for so long. It's been a long time coming. I think it was 2007 when I first attended a meeting about the construction of the new hospital. And back then, I remember a discussion about this not just being about the critical care centre, but the way it would free up space at existing hospitals such as the Royal Gwent, also Neville Hall, and that would allow for future reconfiguration. Back in 2007, it was anticipated that there would be a new Neville Hall by now in 2017, 2018. Clearly, that slipped back What is the timescale for the remodelling of the health services surrounding the critical care centre, the second piece of the pyramid, so to speak? Because the critical care centre is very important, but it is one part of the overall health jigsaw in South East Wales.
Well, bear in mind, of course, that our capital budget was cut by 40%, so it was difficult for us to move forward with the programme that we would have wanted to over the last few years. That said, of course, there have been already a number of local service improvements, including direct access to physiotherapy at Neville Hall. There's community dietitian weight management services available there now, enhanced community diabetes services, enhanced pharmacy management of patient medication. So already we are seeing the development of new services in Neville Hall, and that development will continue, of course, in the future and after the Grange Hospital is opened.
Cwestiwn 11, Neil Hamilton. Cwestiwn 12, Mark Reckless. Cwestiwn 13, Rhina Biorwer.
A wneud y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am ddiogelu cofebau rhyfel yng Nghymru?
Wel, mae cofebau rhyfel yn rhan bwysig o'n treftadaeth ac yn atgof parhaol o'r aberth a wnaed ac o'r golled a ddioddefwyd gan gymunedau. Mi'n falch bod cynllun Gran Llywodraeth Cymru a gafodd y lansio yn 2014 fel rhan o'n gweithgareddau gofio'r rhyfel byd cyntaf wedi helpu ddiogelu cofebau rhyfel ledled Cymru.
Mi gofiau heddiw fel y diwrnod lle gyrhaeddon ni gwestiwn 13 a mae'n niolch i Neil Hamilton ag i Mark Reckless am bethu ymestyn am ei ffeil yn ddigon cyflym. Dwi'n ddiolchgar o gael y cyfle a mae hwn yn fater yn digwydd bod dwi'n teimlo'n reit gry yn ei gylcho. Mae cofeba'r rhyfel mawr, mi wyddwch chi amdanyn nhw ar sgwar y pentre, yn bethau sy'n cael ei gwarchod a mae Cadw yn gwneud gwaith arbennig yn ei gwarchod nhw. Ond mae'na gofeba'r rhyfel eraill o gwmpas Cymru mewn capeli er enghraifft, neu hyd yn oed mewn hen ffatrioedd sy'n cofio pobl sydd wedi colli i bywydau mewn rhyfeloedd. Mae angen gwarchod y rheini hefyd, a gael wneud apel ar Lywodraeth Cymru i sicrhau bod gwaith yn gallu cael ei wneud. Mi allai roi y Llywodraeth mewn cyswllt ar bobl sy'n gwneud ymchwil yn y maes hwn mwyn yn helpu ni warchod yn treftadaeth ni ar gyfer y dyfodol a chofio'r rheini gollodd i bywydau.
Wel, gaeth wi wedi cyrraedd cwestiwn 15 o'r blaen, ond dim os amser, achos ni'n cael ein gyhyddo roi atebion yn rifyr. So achos hynny, penderfynu sydd o rhaid i fi felly i ehangu'r atebion yn y pen draw. Wi'n gwybod bod cofeb Llan Rhyddlad yr Ynys Môn yn cael ei ystyried ar hyn o bryd ynglyn â cael ei rhestru fel cofeb sydd yn arbennig. Mae hwnna yn enghraifft anarferol wy'n deall o gofeb sydd gath ei ail ddylunio ar ôl yr ail rhyfel a sydd â ffigur o filwr o'r ail rhyfel yna. Un o'r pethau wnaethon ni gorffon i wneud pan ddechreuon ni'r cynllun hyn oedd sicrhau bod ni'n gwybod faint o gofebau oedd yna, achos doedd neb ar rhestro, doedd neb yn gwybod le'n gwrs o nhw. Ond beth sydd wedi digwydd lan i nawr yw, mae yna mwy o bobl wedi ystyried bod gyda nhw cofeb, a wedi wrth gwrs ystyried bod rhaid cael bach o arian mwyn sicrhau bod y cofeb hynny yn cael ei gadw yn y ffordd priodol. So felly, os mae yna rhai ar Ynys Môn, holl bwysig bod ni'n gwybod le mae nhw, ac wrth gwrs holl bwysig bod nhw'n gwybod ym mha ffordd allan nhw i gael unrhyw fath o help.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog. Yr eitem nesaf ar yr agenda ni